hotlbr.com.
Mama told me one day, when you pay me for it, she must put her hand back to pay for all the organizations, all the people, the NGO, all of them here, UNICEF, everybody here, they help me out. But we can help ourselves. 3 years now, I've been sitting there, I can't go to school. My brother in the boot that she didn't go, I know who is she, whether I am or whether I don't know. So I think if I don't have to go over to do, because today I don't go over, tomorrow I go, then tomorrow I go. Then I'm not the best.
When I learn my book, I will help you, Mama. I will help you, Papa. Welcome to today's class. Welcome to the Weapons in Education channel, where we believe that education has power, that there is power in education. All right, and subscribe to the educational philosophy as in the word education, which says enduring discipline under careful assessment and trained instruction. So by the fact that you are listening to us, it tells that you are willing to endure discipline under careful assessment and trained instruction. I want to say Happy New Year to all of you. If you are just joining us, this is the Weapon in Education channel, YouTube channel, where we'll be providing some basic information regarding research and other educational related topics. All right. For today's class, we are going to be looking at characteristics of research. But before delving into the characteristics of research, it will be important for us to first of all look at the word research as a word and as a subject or discipline. Research comes from an old French word, recherche, which means to search again. Now, bringing the word on a literary context, research. Re is a prefix, means again, while search has many meanings: to find, to inquire, to investigate. All right, and many more, to see or whatever. So if read means again and search means to find, to inquire, to investigate, that tells us that the word research is to find again. The word research is to inquire again. Research is to investigate again. Why again, and again? Again and again tells us that there was an earlier search. That tells us that there was an earlier search. And it denotes that the search that was done was not exhaustive. It might have ended, but the search need more search to be done. One problem leads to another problem. So that's the reason why we say we should search again. Search again. We should find again. We should inquire again. We should investigate again. Alright? So, looking at the definition of research, we can clearly define research as an intentional, purposive or purposeful, systematic inquiry using using various methods to collect and analyze data. There are many definitions to the word research, but for the purpose of this class, we are going to subscribe to this definition. We define research as an intentional, purposive, systematic inquiry using various methods to collect and analyze data. Why is research considered intentional? It is intentional because a research cannot be done from the blue sky. One just get out and say, oh, okay, I observed this thing. Okay, it's a research. No. Research is intentional. The doer, the researcher, the person who is conducting the study should have an intent, should make up decision that I'm going to conduct this research on this and this and this. There should be a plan. Research is purposeful. It requires aim. You are aiming towards a particular finding. You want to find out a particular you want to investigate, let's say, you want to investigate what the problem is, where the problem lies, what causes this thing to happen. When this thing happens, then what happens? You want to see whether there is a relationship. You must define a purpose. And in defining your purpose, though having intent of conducting a study, it should be done using systematic process. One step should lead to another step. One step leads to another step. So we say research is intentional, it's purposeful, it is systematic as an inquiry, right? In doing this, we cannot achieve all of those things that we have just talked about without proper methods. They have components. Okay, you have an intention, fine. Your intention is to determine the causes. But now, how are you going to determine the causes? Right? If you have found the causes, how did you derive to these causes? Is what we refer to as the method component. So, in our class discussion today, we are going to dwell our focus on characteristics of research. Now that you have gotten a concept of research, let us quickly look at some characteristics. These characteristics may not be an exhaustive, but they aim at major characteristics of research. The first characteristic we want to look at is research should be geared towards investigating a problem. You see? The first characteristics, or these characteristics, as a matter of fact, are not listed in order or sequence. So I'm just labeling them as per my own memory system. It's not in order of importance or order of which one come first, which one come second. No. All right. But in order to conduct research, a researcher should consider that there is a problem to be investigated. When there is a problem to be investigated, then a research can begin. Now, what do we mean by problems to be investigated? In the social world, humans interact, and social problems arise as a result of human interaction. So, in the social world, social scientists are determined to find out the causes or the impact that these problems having on the environment and the people that they live with. So these problems or these social phenomena are what we refer to as those social problems, those problems that are occurring that requires investigation for one to understand. In order to do that, there are many social problems around us. You look into a direction, you need to be observant based on experience, reading books, reading journals, reading from internet, communicating with people, and whatever way you can get to your problem. But problems are everywhere around us, right? Let's take for example, we identify a problem like this. Or let's take this problem as an example. The causes of let's say the causes of high school students failing was in Liberia. As a matter of disclaimer, this topic is selected on the basis of illustration. There has been no report. If there is a report, but we did not take time to investigate report, to research, to check as to whether this thing there is a quantitative existence data to it. But we are just using this as a description, as an illustration. All right. So we say the causes of high school students failing WAS in Liberia. As a matter of fact, those of you who do not know WAS is West African Senior School Certificate Exam. It's an exam that is given in West African regions that are to member countries. So if we say the causes of high school students failing WAS in Liberia, this tells us that there has been failure. Students in high school has been failing WAS in past times. We want to find out why or what lead to their failure in the international exam, right? The WAS exam. Now, in order to find out this problem, there can be many things to consider. Let's see this. One may want to consider the students' failure in WAS, right? Okay. In order to determine this, one may want to talk to, let's say, the students themselves. You want to talk to the teachers. You want to talk to, let's say, school administrators. You want to talk to parents, as a matter of fact, parents themselves. All right? Whatever your subject will be. But the point we are gearing towards is, in order to have a good research should be geared towards investigating a problem. So there has been problem about high school students failing WAS. But we cannot determine what causes these failures. So in order to determine what caused these failures, we need to design it as a problem for investigation. How can we find out the causes of high school students failing worse in Liberia? This can only be done when we can design or begin our investigation of talking to students, parents, and stakeholders, right, that are in the field of education in high school in Liberia. So we say the first characteristics, let's just leave this because we use it as a demonstration for, okay. So the first major characteristics of a research is that a research should be geared towards investigating a problem. And we say the problem here is what? Students, high school students failure. High school students failing worse. This is the problem. Alright? Let's look at another characteristics of a good research. A good research should be well planned. A good research should be well planned and in a systematic manner. You see, a good research should be well planned and it should be in a what? Systematic manner. How do we plan this study? Now we want to investigate what caused students failing WASC exam in Liberia. In order to do this, we cannot just jump and begin the research. We must take many factors into account. And these factors that we are taking into account is the process of planning. Before beginning the process of the study, we have to plan on how we want the study, how are we going to go about collecting our data, how will we be analyzing our data. All of these factors have to be considered. That's the process of planning. Systematically, research is arranged. One process leads to another process. The first process we have done here is to identify the problem. Right? We identify the problem. The problem is that high school students are failing worse in Liberia. This we have identified. Now, in order to investigate this study, we then have to think about an orderly manner. The first process is identifying the problem. Then, if possible, if it is a quantitative study, we create hypotheses. Whether alternate hypothesis that may lead to null hypothesis, okay. But the reality is, if it is an experimental study, we decide to determine, state or logical guess, or predicting, making a statement, predicting the outcome of this study. Alright? But if it is not qualitative, it's quantitative, there will be no need for hypothesis, then we collect our data. So all of these things, going on to analysis of data, conclusion, these are what we call the systematic manner. We say research should be in a system plan, it should be well planned, and it should be in a systematic manner. Okay? Now let's look at the next characteristics of a good research. The next characteristics of a good research. A good research should be objective. A good research should be what? Objective. It should also be not only objective, it should also be unbiased. And it should be what? Logical. Objectivity is very key in the study of research. Once a researcher predicts a study, the researcher should exhibit certain behaviors. And these behaviors are what we are talking about here. The first behavior is objectivity we're talking about. Objectivity refers to avoiding putting your subjective feelings into the study. So a researcher who is conducting a research and avoids to put his subjective or her subjective feelings into the study is practicing objectivity. While conducting the research, it is also advisable that the researcher keep an objective eye so that those who the study is being conducted on or those who will be reading the study can rely on the data that the researcher has collected. Because if the researcher puts himself, oh, because I am a girl and I am the one conducting this research on who cause girls to drop from school. Alright? Then I say, okay, or let's take this topic for example. We say I'm a girl, right? I'm conducting a research on men and women who is responsible for relationship breakup. Since I am a girl or I am a woman, and the study is about a woman, then all of my findings or all of my investigation, those who I will talk to, I will prefer to talk to women and not talk to men to get a side of men. Because I believe I have already a preconceived mind. And since I think I'm a woman, I do not want to say anything bad about women. So that study that I'm conducting will end, the finding will end up that men are responsible for relationship breakup. When you do that, you have avoided objectivity in your studies. A research should be unbiased. Biasness is another practice. And this practice, unbiased, a researcher should not be biased. That's what we say, right? So when a researcher or a research is biased, the researcher fail to consider other samples, other who are members of that sample, either for his or her own interest, right? But biasness is excluding certain members of the sample for whatever reason that may be known to the researcher. So once a research is not unbiased, it is biased, then what happens is that it creates some doubts in the minds of those who will be reading such study. That, well, the findings of this study cannot be depended upon. The findings of this study is one-sided. The findings of this study is based on this and not on this. Right? Right, so if we are conducting the study, the causes of high school students failing WASP in Liberia, in order to avoid being unbiased, what do? We will talk to cross-section of people, and these people we'll be talking to will be students. Students are the main participants that we're going to be looking at. But in drawing our survey, can we take our survey for only, let's say, boys? Because students can be boys, students can be girls, right? So if we take our survey to only boys and get any result from from this study, this tells us that this is not a true representation of the population of students that one talk to. When this is done, we say the research is biased. Okay, I decided to use a systematic sampling technique, right? I said, well, when I get to the classroom, I will use a list of, let's say, from 20 students. I want to talk to every 5 student, every 5th student, right, in the class. So when I get to the class, I say, you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I count the class of 20 students. Now I say, all those whose number is 5th or in the 5th category, sit down. Instead of those who stand, sit down. There you see all those in the 5th category have sat down. So what happened now is that I am objective, I am unbiased. I did not choose the sample based on who I know, or I did not choose the sample based on girls or boys. I chose a sample based on my plan of sampling technique, right? I said I will talk to every 5th. So every person there has equal chances of being selected. Only provided if you are in the 5th category. But what happened if I went there? Then I said, 5th, no man, the guy doesn't look smart. You sit down. Okay, this boy looks smart. Okay, you stand up. This boy. What happens there? I'm practicing biasness. So a research as part of characteristics should be objective. It should be unbiased. It should be what? Logical. It should make sense. As a result of the orderly arrangement and following processes, the tone of the study will determine the logical segment of the study. So we will take more time to explain these characteristics, but for the purpose of today's studies, I'm only bringing. Okay, we say we are going to use this as our study for today, the courses of high school students, right, filling in Liberia. Alright, so the next characteristics we are going to look at is our next characteristics of a good research is that a research should be based on empirical evidence. A research should be based on empirical evidence. Empirical evidence would mean a researcher can decide based on the quality of study or based on the method of study. A researcher can decide to use observation method to determine. Okay. The researcher can decide to use experiment to determine empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is first-hand information from primary sources, right? In conducting empirical study, we consider observation, and to observe is going to the participant. Maybe we may design a questionnaire, take to the field, and distribute to the respondents. This mainly happens in, let's say, not historical, but how do you call this? Ethnographic research, where the researcher will go to live with the people and learn about their culture, understand the ways of life, then get real evidence, which is what we call the research should be based on empirical evidence. You know, it is more reliable if a study has empirical evidence than a study having secondary evidence, right? And as a matter of fact, empirical evidence can be drawn from secondary data. Secondary data are studies that have been conducted by other researchers from respondents or participants in the field. And another researcher has decided to investigate that study to conduct another study. So it mostly occur in meta-analysis study where the researcher using quantitative data will put together various studies, and these studies are drawn from studies conducted from empirical evidence. So when we say a research will be based on empirical evidence, it is not only primary data that is considered research. Secondary data can also be used as a research because even the data that was used in the secondary data is drawn from empirical evidence. Alright? Now let's look at the next characteristics of a good research. The next characteristics, another major characteristics of a good research is that it should be accurate and precise. You will not want to give information to people that are not correct, right? So every research should have accuracy. There should be the information in the study should be what? Accurate, and it should be correct. It should be exact. So you will not want to go, you say, there are 5 million persons in Liberia. You stated this in your research that there are 5 million persons living in Liberia. Then, when we went to the Liberia Institute of Statistics Geoinformation Services latest response to the population pulse, we did our study and found out that the study is saying there are approximately 5 million persons living in Liberia. There are two different things here. Saying that there are 5 million persons in Liberia and saying that there are approximately 5 million persons living in Liberia, they are two different things. So you see, a research should be correct, it should be exact. So if the data you consulted or those you talked to gave you the information, report the information as it is. 5 million persons living in Liberia that you got. When we went to authenticate this data, we found out that latest report is stating that there is approximately 5 million. So it means that there's a likelihood that the population, those who live in Liberia, do not reach 5 million. Or they are almost near 5 million. But for you, you say they are exact 5 million. Alright? So let's go to the next. The next characteristics of a good research. In conducting a research, we should consider these characteristics because they are key to any research study. The next characteristics, which should be 6 number, we say a research is cyclical. Now let's look at this. This is a cycle, right? We say this is a research. The first segment of this cycle is identifying problem. The next segment of this cycle is collecting data. The next segment could be analyzing data. The next section will be interpretation of data or interpreting data. Then we say we have findings, conclusion. Right? Looking at this is going around as a cycle. So the steps that involved in research is that it begins with identifying the problem. The researcher collects his data or data, analyzes the data, interprets the data, gets finding, conclude, and then there's a likelihood that the conclusion or the findings from the study could lead to another study. And if it leads to another study, that means identifying a problem again. So research is a cycle. It leads to another research. One research leads to another research. One research leads to another research. That's what we mean by research should be cyclical. That there is a problem to be built on another problem. Alright? The next characteristics of a good research is that a research should be conducted on a well-defined subject. Should be conducted on a well-defined subjects and have a scope. You see, by subject we mean those who the problem are affecting. We said earlier on the causes of high school students failing was in Liberia. Who the problem affecting? Isn't it high school students? Students. The problem is affecting students. Because students go to school, write the exam in order to make a pass. But if students go to school and does not make a pass, it becomes a problem for who? Though a problem for others, but the main problem is with the student because it hinders the student's progress. So we say the major subject of this study will be students, right? So if we are going to conduct this study, we will have to define our subject. And in defining our subject, we do not only look at students, but what age group of students, right? Maybe since we are talking about the national exam, it doesn't matter what age group write the exam, but we will be looking at boys who write exam. We'll be looking at girls who write exam. These boys should be students. We define our subjects. These girls should be students. It is not any boy that we're going to talk to. It is not any girl we're going to talk to. Those boys that we'll be talking to should be students. Those girls we'll be talking to should be students. And not just students, but there should be students who have sat WAS or who have sat WAS. That's it. Including those who have failed WAS. You see that? So that's what we mean by it should be conducted, research should be conducted on a well-defined subject and now the scope. The scope is the boundary. Our boundary here is high school students because we are aware that it is high school students who can write exam. So we will not have to go down to elementary students to go ask them, or junior high student to ask them, or what are the causes? Why do students feel worse? We'll be getting nowhere. Even the answers we'll get will not really be reliable because we did not aim at the main subjects. So we should define our scope, our area of study, our boundary, right? Let's move ahead. So, another major characteristic of a good research is that it should be replicable. By replicable, we mean the findings of a research study should produce additional study. When a study has been done and another study, it leads to another study, that study that it led to should produce similar result that the earlier study produced. So it will say the first study we want to conduct is the concept of high school student fielding was in Liberia. So it will find the causes. We say, okay, the cause of students failing was is that students are do not put time to their studies, right? Let's say this is our findings. We found out that students do not put time to their studies. So this can lead to another problem, which we consider another research. So if students do not put time to their studies, who should be responsible to have students putting time to their studies? Is it teacher? Is it parents? So you see, one finding is leading to another study, but that's why we say cyclical. But now when we conduct another study, which is similar to this study, the result must, even if it is different, must not be so far apart. So we repeat this study, and even if we repeat this study, there should be similarity in the results. So replicable implies repeating the studies and deriving at the same finding or findings that are alike or almost the same but not far apart. So a good research should have such characteristics. Alright? So we're going to look at another major characteristics of a good research. A good research should have appropriate methods and instruments for data collection and data analysis. So it should have appropriate methods and instrument. One can call these tools as the same thing, instruments of data collection and analysis. So you see, appropriate methods and instruments of data collection and analysis. Methods are very important in conducting research. If you do not know your way, you will just be going like a blind person. So you can have the best research topic. You can have the best participants to talk to. But if you do not have the right method, that's why we use the term appropriate. Every study defines its method. It is not all study has the same method. Every study based on whatever factor it can be, but based on the study or the investigation, it directs which research method to be used. There are many research methods, but the most common ones are qualitative and quantitative. So we say this one we utilize the use of words, expression, we're using observation. Quantitative is using numbers. When we use numbers, we do analysis of numbers. There are studies that contain both qualitative and quantitative. Alright, so a good research should have appropriate methods and an instrument of data collection. What are the instruments of data collection? We have questionnaire. We can use questionnaire, you design your questions in the form of open-ended questions or closed-ended questions. You go to the field, distribute the questionnaire to participants, and they provide answers. You collect your questionnaires, draw your teams, and whatever to do your analysis. So you can also use interview to collect data. Not only that, you can use focus group discussion. So you see, so you have many methods, many instruments of data collection. A good research should have instrument of data analysis. Nowadays in social sciences, we use a software known as SPSS. When we collect our data from the field, we have the data imported into this software and give it command. It will draw charts, be it pie charts, bar graphs, or whatever. Do analysis on male, female. This we can use to analyze our data. You can use graphs, bar graph, frequency distribution table. Alright, frequency distribution table. So, a good research should have appropriate methods and instruments of data collection and analysis. Alright, now quickly let's look at the next characteristics. The next characteristics of a good research. A good research should be, this is said right, should be relevant. Relevance is very important. You won't want to conduct a research that don't mean any interest to the society. People are looking for new information, new solutions to problems. Why would I want to use study that has been done all around the place? Everybody using the same study. It is good. Well, fine, it can be used in another form. But people will go for information that are relevant, that meets the need of the society. So when you are conducting your research or conducting study, you should take into account that this study I'm conducting is irrelevant. Is it important? Will people see it as a means of helping to solve problems in the society? You want to write a paper and then people just take the paper and trash it. Alright? Now, let's look at the next characteristics of a good research. It should be one that has one of ethical consideration. A good research should be one of what? Ethical consideration. By ethics, we mean that those principles that govern human and behavioral patterns of human and their environment. So, every institution has principles. To get into an institution to conduct a study, you have to first seek the permission of that or authority in that institution. To conduct research involving participants from an institution, you need to seek the consent of authorities of that institution, even the participants themselves. So all these things we're talking about, they are ethical consideration. How did you go about in carrying on your research? This has great impact on the outcome of your studies. Okay, let's take, since I did not have the means to talk to authority of the institution, I just saw the students, I say, you come. Say, you come. I saw the question, say, you come. Can't answer the question yet. We want to know whether the way you design your sample will determine whether your research findings can be relied upon, because it's possible that that will not be the right the right samples, the right participants, right? The right people to be included in the sample. So if you do that and then you go and sit, everything you'll be writing will just be based on whatever, right? So ethical consideration is very important. You must inform the researchers of what you are doing. How are you doing it? Tell them their role in the study and acknowledge them that at any time of the study they are free. As a matter of fact, they are free to partake. They can decide to partake or not to partake. That means it's a voluntary basis. If they decide to partake, even when they are participating in the study, they can withdraw at any point of the study. That's ethical consideration. There are many other ethical considerations to research. So let's to end this video or this class. The last characteristics of a good research. Last, in context of our class, there may be other characteristics that you may know or that you may come across, but these we have listed and we are ending is key to any good research. All right. So lastly, but very important, a good research should be carefully reported and it should be carefully recorded. Sorry, it should be carefully recorded. Let me just make it clearer. It should be carefully recorded and reported. So, if you do a research, the way in which you report a study, the systematic process, the logical process that involved, if you are not careful with recording how well you write it out, which comes first, followed by what, and report your findings. How do we report our findings? Findings can be reported by publishing in journals, or we can decide to present. If it is a dissertation, if it is a thesis, we will be reporting what we have found from the field to those who are on panel of investigation. So we say carefully record and report your finding is very key to the study of research. So thank you. These are some major characteristics of a good research. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.